The day my father left, he didn't say goodbye. He didn't hug me. He didn't even look back. He simply put the keys to our old family house on the kitchen table and said, "It's yours now." I was 23, and I honestly thought he was giving me a home. I was wrong, because when I opened the front door that evening, I discovered what he had really left me with. A house with broken windows, a leaking roof, a mountain of unpaid bills, and almost nothing inside. The electricity had already been shut off. The refrigerator was empty. Even the furniture my mother had loved was gone. My father had taken everything valuable before leaving. He had sold the family car, emptied the savings account, and somehow managed to leave me with debts I didn't even know existed. I stood in the middle of that empty living room, holding a stack of bills in my hands. Then my phone rang. It was my older brother, Daniel. I answered. He didn't ask if I was okay. He laughed. "Dad said you got the house." I did. "You should be grateful." I looked around at the cracked walls. "Grateful for what?" "For your inheritance." I almost laughed. "Inheritance? Daniel, this place is falling apart." There was a pause. Then he said something I'll never forget. "That's why Dad gave it to you. Nobody else wanted it." And he hung up. That night, I slept on the floor using an old blanket as a pillow. I cried for a while. Then something inside me changed. I realized nobody was coming to save me. Not my father. Not my brother. Not my relatives. So I made myself a promise. I would rebuild that house. And more importantly, I would rebuild my life. I started with a tiny job during the day and repaired the house at night. I learned everything I could. Construction, real estate, investing, business. Every dollar I earned went toward fixing that broken property. People laughed at me. Some relatives even called me foolish. But 5 years later, that worthless house was worth more than anyone could have imagined. And that was only the beginning. I started buying small properties. Then commercial buildings. Then I launched my own real estate company. 10 years after my father walked away, I wasn't struggling anymore. I had built a fortune. I had a beautiful home, a successful company, and, finally, peace. Then one ordinary Tuesday morning, my assistant walked into my office holding an envelope. She looked nervous. "There's a letter for you." "From whom?" She turned the envelope around. My father's name was written on it. I hadn't heard from him in years. I opened it. There were only 3 sentences. "We need to talk. Your family has a claim to your company. And you need to understand where your money really came from." I read it twice. Then I noticed something tucked behind the letter. A photocopy of an old legal document. And at the bottom was a signature I recognized immediately. My father's. For the first time in 10 years. I wondered if the house he left me had never actually been the real inheritance. Stared at my father's signature for what felt like an hour. The document was dated 22 years earlier. At first, I couldn't understand what I was looking at. Then I saw the words that made my stomach drop. Transfer of ownership. I called my attorney, Michael, immediately. He arrived at my office that afternoon. I placed the document in front of him. "Tell me what this means." He studied it carefully. After several minutes, he looked up. "This is serious." "How serious?" He pointed to one paragraph. Your father didn't simply leave you that house. He transferred something else to you. I leaned forward. What? Michael took a breath. A small investment property your grandfather owned. I frowned. My grandfather? Yes. According to this document, your grandfather placed the property into a family trust before he died. I suddenly remembered something. My grandfather had always told me, one day, you'll understand why I kept everything in writing. I had been too young to understand what he meant. Michael continued. That property was sold years ago. To whom? He looked at the paperwork. Your father's company. I froze. So my father bought my grandfather's property? No. Michael turned another page. He transferred it. To himself? No. He looked directly at me. To you. Silence filled the room. I couldn't understand. If it belonged to me, why did I never know about it? Michael gave me a grim smile. Because someone made sure you didn't. That night, I went through every box I still had from my childhood. Old photographs, tax papers, letters, school records, and finally, at the bottom of an old wooden box, I found a photograph of my grandfather standing beside my father. On the back, there was handwriting. For my granddaughter, Emma. Never let anyone convince you that you don't deserve what your family built. I had tears in my eyes. But then I found something even more shocking. A second document. It showed that the original property had been sold years ago for a surprisingly small amount. But the buyer wasn't a stranger. It was my father's business. And that business had eventually become part of a much larger company. A company that had supplied the first major investment that helped me start my own real estate business. I sat there in silence. My entire fortune had been built through years of hard work. But the first opportunity, the first piece of capital, the first property, had a connection to my grandfather. And apparently, my father knew everything. The next morning, my father arrived at my office. He was older now, gray hair, expensive suit, but the same cold expression. My brother Daniel walked in behind him. My father sat down without asking. "You've done well," he said. I didn't respond. He smiled. "We're proud of you." I almost laughed. "After all these years." Daniel interrupted. "Let's not make this emotional." My father placed a folder on my desk. "We're here because the family has a rightful claim." I opened the folder. Inside were legal documents demanding a percentage of my company. I looked at him. "You abandoned me." He shrugged. "You were given the family property. A house full of debt. You turned it into something valuable. Because I worked for it." My father leaned back. "And because of the family assets." I looked at Daniel. He wouldn't meet my eyes. Then my father said the sentence that changed everything. "You don't actually own everything you think you own." I slowly closed the folder. "Then prove it." My father smiled. "We will." He stood up. But before leaving, he leaned toward me and whispered, "Just remember, Emma, your grandfather left more than property behind." Then he walked out. I sat there wondering what else my grandfather had left me. That evening, Michael called. His voice sounded different. "Emma, I found something." "What?" "A second trust." My heart started pounding. "Whose name is on it?" There was a long pause. Then he said, "Yours." "But there's a problem." "What problem?" The trust was never supposed to become active until your father tried to take control of your assets. I couldn't breathe for a moment. My father hadn't realized it yet. By trying to take my fortune, he had just activated the one document that could take everything away from him.